Excellent. But I think I am right, by the way.
So as people are logging in, we'll give people a minute. So it'll be a minute before we start the official program. But Rob and I were having a debate, and I know I'm right, over the where things are going, because I found out yesterday yet another law firm, not my firm, but is having a record year. My firm's having a decent year, and what I'm seeing across the board is revenues are sort of pre-pandemic target and expenses are down. But Rob sees a cliff on the horizon.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I mean, the laws of economics say at some point this is it's got to. But I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. But and as we were talking, law firms may be having a record year, but I think what we're seeing is, yes, those numbers are rolling in, but there is still very much a grip on spend, right? That I think maybe that might sort of be leading or lending towards some of that, but I don't know.
Yeah, but I think now that people are finally relaxed in the fourth quarter, that they're going, okay. Although I will say, we're in our budgeting process, and there's still a little bit of ooh, but and I'm I'm a counter voice within my firm saying we need to invest in our business. So, but we should have a bet.
Yes. We'll
a glass of bourbon, perhaps, or.
Yes. Well, I was going to say we have a thing. Anyways, we have a thing every Friday at Big Hand. We have a sort of a management catch up, and we have a little drinks on a Friday afternoon. So we have a virtual happy hour. So we'll invite you.
Okay. There we go. With that, I think we'll get the actual program going. Thank you all for joining today on Legal Value Network's webinar, The Evolution and Future of Legal Matter Pricing. I am Toby Brown. I'm the Chief Practice Management Officer at Perkins Coie, and I serve on the board of LVN. And it's in that role I'm very excited to let you know that LVN is now, we've surpassed 550 members in just 8 months. So things are going well. The board members and myself, we created this community to focus on the evolution of the legal industry. We're bringing you curated content like today's webinar. We have our newsletter, our Council of Luminaries, and soon, coming soon is our podcasts. We're also developing roundtables, groups, forums, and of course, we're looking at the LVN conference experience for the fall of 2021, and we're calling it experience because you guys are all in the same situation. We're waiting to see how things roll out to see what sort of program that'll be, but we will have a program then. You can find all the details on all of those on our website, legalvaluenetwork.com. For those of you in attendance who are not yet a member of LVN, I encourage you to go to the website and look at the membership options. We have a special program through the end of the year that anyone, whether you're client, law firm, or provider, can join on a complimentary basis. If you do join and you do pay, then you will have founding member status, which is just cool in and of itself, but that will provide discounts for programs going forward, such as the fall conference experience. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We do a lot of our announcements on LinkedIn. That's a good way to see what's coming up. A few housekeeping announcements before we get this going. The only video you will see is that of the panelists. So don't worry if you're in your sweats or other comfortable clothing. Everyone is on mute except the panelists, so you don't need to be concerned about that. This event will be recorded and it will be put up on the website for members soon after this event. We are encouraging questions, and we're generally going to hold those until the end, and I'll actually be coming back in. So use the Q&A feature in Zoom, not the chat one, but the Q&A one. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Rob. From Big Hand. We're very, very happy to have you here today, Rob, and also very grateful that Big Hand is a founding sponsor of LVN. We appreciate your support very much. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rob.
Perfect. Thanks, Toby. As Toby mentioned, my name is Rob Stote. I'm a director of client solutions at Big Hand, and in that role, I sort of have a view to our entire product range, and really my focus and expertise is around some of our financial business intelligence products and our matter pricing and profitability tools. But I thought maybe before we jump in, it might be a good idea to sort of provide a quick intro and a little bit of background of what Big Hand is and what we do, because I think in this space, maybe a bit of a newer name to some folks. So I thought it might be a good idea to give some background. So Big Hand sort of, we've been in the legal software business for about 25 years now, actually. Really had been focused on sort of front office and back office operations, and more recently have gotten into sort of financial data and financial data processing. We have sort of a broad range of products sort of that run the gamut from firm size and complexity, et cetera. But really, we sort of focus on three main areas of a firm. We have our document creation area, which for most folks on the call may not necessarily resonate, but we sort of have our delegation tools and our profitability tools as we sort of segment them out. And sort of around delegation, our product is Big Hand Now, and that really is about moving work around the firm. And I think for some folks on the phone that might be of interest, but it really is about moving work around the firm and tracking and sort of making sure that things are going where they're supposed to be going within or without the firm. And then, excuse me, and then we also have a sort of a rich set of financial tools in terms of both the business analytics and business intelligence around our Big Hand Quantum, and matter pricing and profitability around Big Hand Evaluate. And those tools focus specifically on financial performance at a law firm, ranging from sort of the C-level executive suite all the way down to the working timekeeper. And I guess if you can sort of connect the dots a little bit, if you think about our delegation tool and our financial tool, we're actually in a pretty unique position in the market. Big Hand is, and because we sort of have a view into both the operational side of the law firm and the financial performance side of the law firm. And we're able to marry those two sort of very rich data sets up. It kind of puts us in a position to be able to really provide firms with some data and some insight into actually how not only are they performing financially, but how they're performing operationally. So with that little background out of the way, again, we're very proud to be a founding member of the LVN network and sponsor, and we're excited about this particular program. So as Toby mentioned, today's title or program is called The Evolution and the Future of Legal Matter Pricing. And really a brief description of that is, as you probably saw from the invite, but really firms are looking at differentiating themselves and are employing sort of increasing sophisticated pricing and profitability strategies, talking to clients about pricing and budgeting, et cetera, and also sort of looking at the cost of business or the cost of services sold. And then, excuse me, and the goal today is really to sort of focus on three main areas of that. And as we sort of say, as the pricing rules evolve, so do the strategies and the tools being used by you all. So we really want to focus on three main areas where this started, where we're headed, and the use of technology in all of that. So with that, we have sort of pretty amazing panel of experts joining me today in this conversation, and it is going to be a conversation. First, we've got Shanna Davidson. Shanna is the Director of Legal Operations at Barnes Thornburg. Shanna has significant experience in the development, management, execution of process improvements, solutions, pricing, financial solutions that bring greater value and efficiency and predictability to the delivery of legal services. Oh my God, I should have read that before I read that. Shanna's success comes through engaging, and actually, this is the most important part, the education and collaboration with firm management and the attorneys teams to sort of think about and devise different ways to enhance the client experience at the firm. Second on the panel is Natasha Edlow. Natasha is the Director of Strategic Pricing and Analytics and Project Management at Covington Burling, where she champions pricing and profitability best practices both in their corporate, litigation, and regulatory practice areas. Her expertise includes strategic pricing, legal project management, complex data analytics, financial modeling, expense management, and business development. And last but not least, my friend John Lindrus. John is the pricing analysis manager at Foley & Lardner, where he oversees pricing, AFAs, profitability, lateral partner acquisitions. In his role, John leads the firm's rate setting process, develops financial analysis and benchmarks related to client and practice and profitability models. He helps forecast lateral acquisitions and designs and implements and monitors all of the AFA arrangements at the firm. So with that, let's get going. Thanks for everyone for joining. As I mentioned, this is going to be sort of a panel discussion Q&A type thing. So I'm going to kind of throw out a topic and we'll discuss it. As I mentioned, there's three broad categories that we're going to be talking about today, which is sort of where this started, where we're headed, and the use of technology. As a quick housekeeping reminder, don't forget, use the Q&A, feature in the Zoom to ask your questions. We're monitoring those along the way. So with that, let's get started. A question for everybody. if you could share a little bit your experience about how you guys started and where you started around pricing and the role of sort of client value at the firms, and I'll open it up to whoever wants to start.
We'll take the lead.
Go.
So I actually have a unique background in that I have a finance background, and I also have my MBA. But prior to joining the legal industry in 2014, I was actually working for Rolls-Royce on the aviation side, which here in Indianapolis, they were making aircraft engines. And I say that because, I'm coming from an industry that was very 5S compliant and had Lean Six Sigma. And then jumping over to the legal industry, it was a big change for me. And then in 2014, when I started in the legal industry, I started in a finance position and then quickly moved into pricing and matter management in 2015. And then now in 2018, I moved into more of a legal operations role. So really, I've had multiple different titles in the last 3 to 4 years.
Nice. John or Natasha?
So I started with the firm back in 2002, and prior to that, I was at an insurance company where part of my responsibility was approving legal bills. And I transitioned over to the law firm. In 2002, we were doing profitability, but we were kind of more in the back room. We weren't very front facing. Not a lot of people knew that what I did or who I was even. And then in about 2007, 2008, we were brought into the approval process on the intake side, that anything that had discount pricing or needed to be pushed through to or an AFA had to come through our department for approval, or in a more formal process where we actually hit the button and had to push it along through. So it's been an evolution from 2002 to 2008 to where we are today. It started off very informal, and now it's more and more formal that we have to, a lot of people will pull us in a lot sooner in the process than they ever did before. Even 5 years, 10 years ago, it was, oh, that's the last person you talk to get the final approval. Now they found that it's much easier to get our buy-in and our planning and our insight at the very front end of it. So it's been an evolution, and hopefully, over the next 3 to 5 years, we get a little bit more forward on that.
No jumping ahead. No jumping ahead. That's
I know. I know. I realize that.
But it's interesting though, as you say that, and I'll throw it over to you, Natasha. But I think I've heard twice now the idea of formal process, formal process, and I think when we were sort of having our previous discussions, we sort of talked a little bit about how early on, and there's probably a broad range of firms joining us today. So early on, there may have been a bit of a Wild West type sort of approach to this. Not that may not necessarily be a bad thing. It's just that's what it was initially. And I think maybe just speak a little bit about how it started out at where you are, and is that the sort of evolution from sort of not really a process to more of a formal thing?
Yeah, so I think that, I've been at 3 law firms in my career over the past 11 years. Those law firms have had very different approaches to pricing and legal project management. But I think, initially, when I was starting off in the legal industry, attorneys had the autonomy to price however they wanted to for their clients. They had the authority to authorize discounts, provide AFAs, fixed fees, contingencies. Over time, I've seen a shift to more structured processes. Companies, particularly the firm that I'm at, has a very structured business committee that's in control of ensuring that there's consistency across the firm in terms of authorizing discounts, alternative fee arrangements, and even reviewing budgets. And so I think that helps to ensure that across the firm, we are being consistent depending upon the size of the client, the industry that client is in, and just kind of the performance and the goals of the company. That's really helped structure things quite a bit, has helped to, obviously improve profitability for the firm, ensure that we have consistency across the firm, and that, everyone's working together in a way that makes sense.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I think, Shanna, when we were talking earlier too, you mentioned something about really the flip or the switch flipped when the firm, or at least in your experience, the firms had established a position or a role. So for maybe we could speak a little bit about that to the folks that may, obviously the folks on this call probably already have the role, but maybe talk a little bit about how formalizing that position and formalizing the responsibilities around that position really sort of got the ball rolling for establishing that process.
Yeah. So in 2015, for me, is when I really saw that formalized process come about, and that was with the hiring of a chief pricing officer. And I guess it's a little of the chicken or the egg. What came first? Was it because other firms were now having this position that other firms felt like they needed it, or was it really the internal view that firms really needed this governance and formal process on centralized rate control and just record keeping on successes and failures, and having the attorneys come through a central process about negotiating discounts and fee arrangements. But for me, it was really this formal process of getting a chief pricing officer and then starting to document what that role is going to look like and how we're going to then evolve this to really become its own department in the coming years.
I think that actually might dovetail nicely into the question that I'll ask for on each one of these sections. I'd like to have a little takeaway for everybody. So I guess the first takeaway, or the first question I'd ask, and anyone can take this one, is if there is one takeaway from sort of this idea of a bit of a unstructured process to a moving to more formal or structured process, establishing roles. I'm probably giving away what the answer is going to be, but if there is one takeaway from where this started to where we are going to end up, what would that be for any firm struggling with this? What would you sort of advise them is the number one thing to do over the next little while?
I would just say, to start slow and ensure that you have the buy-in from the attorneys. I think the most important thing is to gain their trust across the firm, because coming in with processes and procedures that completely differ from the way things have historically been done is always a challenge. I mean, many firms have been profitable long before the existence of our teams, and so ensuring that we come in, not trying to take over, but really to be partners with those attorneys, and ensuring that we're helping them just as much as they're helping us.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
And I would just add to that. I remember the first idea I pitched to my finance team back in 2014 was just the idea of coming up with a standard folder structure and a standard naming convention for our files. And I know it seems so silly, but at the time we didn't have that. So it really just depends on where your firm is in this maturity curve. But don't think that any task is too small. You can start small with your internal group and then start expanding that to the rest of the firm. Because just thinking that was only 6 years ago we were doing that, and to see where we are now, it's crazy.
Right. And show them where you can add value and make their lives easier. That we're not making a burdensome approval process or something like that. The whole idea is to make the world a better place, is that make the practice of law easier for the attorneys.
That's a great point too. And the folder structure, I hear you, Shanna. I've had conversations like that with firms too. So, well, with that, then why don't we? So we've talked about how we started, and why don't we talk a little bit about where the role is heading? I think if we can imagine, you were sort of referencing stuff 4, 5, 6 years ago, and now we are where we are, and so maybe I'll throw this out of where do we think the role is, or not necessarily the role, but maybe the team will expand both its view and its responsibilities at the firm. So why don't I start with you, Natasha? Where do you see the role being in the next 3 to 5 years, and maybe folks on your team, what will they be doing 3 to 5 years from now?
That's a great question, Rob. When I initially started off as an analyst, the majority of my role and even our team's role was data analytics. Attorneys were asking us, how much has this cost in the past? What types of budgets have we put together? What would the realization be? What would the discount be if we were to do this? And it was very much a transactional type of a relationship where they asked us questions, we gave them answers. I think over time that's transitioned to more of an advisory role. The attorneys come to us for our opinions and our thoughts, and to give us, ideas about the best ways to provide value and add value to their clients from a financial perspective. I think that trajectory is going to continue in terms of being advisors, not only to our partners, and the attorneys within the firm, but to our clients as well. We've started transition to talking to our clients on a more often basis with their legal operations and procurement teams. It's almost morphed into somewhat of a relationship management type of a role, where we have developed partnerships with our counterparts on the client side to be able to engage in those discussions about pricing, legal project management initiatives, and even technology solutions.
Interesting. Do you want to pick up on that? Because I think we talked a little about this earlier, Shanna, about sort of that relationship stuff and management.
Yeah, I was glad Natasha brought that up. So I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So I really do think in the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to see firms creating more of this client success manager type of role. And again, it depends on where your firm is in the maturity curve. But what we continue to see in RFPs is clients having this statement that says, explain why we should use your firm over another firm.
Right.
And so at some point, I think we're going to see that the buying of legal service is going to become more like a business transaction, where the clients are saying, okay, we like your firm because you have great lawyers, but we also want to work with your firm because you provide value for your services, or you deliver on your promises. You provide transparency into your work. You listen to our feedback. Your invoices are correct. And really just your firm's easy to do business with. So I think that the buying of the legal service then becomes more like a business transaction, but with that, there comes this client expectation. And so we see this in other industries already. So usually large industries, if they have a large account, they have a person that's assigned to them, either an account manager or a key account manager, whose sole job is to keep them happy as a customer. And so I think as we see this evolution of our roles in expanding, I see that this is going to start coming just because of the expectations our clients are going to put on us.
And John, what about at Foley? Do you see that broadening of the responsibility of? I mean, I know through our conversations it has, but do you see that broadening as well?
I do. We just established a new type of position just for that, and we're in the process of launching it, because it's this liaison between the partners within the firm, because you have multiple principal billing partners within the firm, and then you have multiple points of contact at the client as well. And a lot of times that conversation, that glue that held that together, was the biller had the relationship, but really we've really kind of elevated that to a different role, to have someone be that financial liaison between that. And when I say financial liaison, it's also going to go into matter management and budgets and a whole bunch of other areas as well, because you have to have both sides communicating to each other. I've said for years, it is a business transaction. You're writing a contract between the law firm and the client. It's just you're one of the interested parties to the contract. Most of our engagement letters also say, please have someone else review this legal opinion on it. So it is a business transaction, and that liaison between the two, I think, will just help the relationship all along.
Nice. And maybe a thought too, guys, on where it's interesting through my conversation with firms, when I talk to folks on the value side, you all sort of sit in different areas too. And I'd be curious to know, have you seen a shift over time? Are we all in finance? Some are in knowledge management, some are on the biz dev side. Do you all sit in that same area, or are you seeing a shift there as well, where as your responsibilities change, maybe who you report to or where you sit in the firm is changing? And I see you nodding, Shanna, so I'll pick on you first.
Yeah, so I think I have the most unique role on this panel in terms of, we actually have a legal ops department, which I don't think Natasha or John have that at their firm. For our firm, we're our own department, and we report up through our COO, but we do have a chief legal operations officer as well. But my role is pretty unique in that, I guess pre-COVID, I physically sat in accounting with our accounting team. And that was strategic and by design, because what we found is that our pricing team can negotiate fixed fees by phase, task code, and everything, but until they're blue in the face. But if that information and knowledge isn't transferred to accounting in a way that makes sense in the financial system or in the client's e-billing system, then there's this huge disconnect on what we're negotiating with our clients and what we're delivering for our clients. And since I speak the same language as both pricing and bill and accounting, and I know the financial system, that's what, to John's point, I kind of had that natural fit as the liaison between pricing, billing, and the client.
Right. No, and that makes sense. And I see you nodding, Natasha. So I'll pick on you next. We'll go this way around the horn. So I'll pick on you next. But similar concept there. I think you're in on the finance side, right, in terms of where you sit in the firm. But do you see that changing too, or do you see that expanding?
Yeah, so our firm has a chief strategic pricing officer that's separate from the CFO, and the CFO has responsibilities for accounting and billing and finance. However, all of our groups work very, very closely together. Just given Shanna's point that everything that we do is so related to the accounting and finance side and billing, and given our backgrounds in finance, there's just this natural inclination to work and partner together because oftentimes our attorneys may not even know the difference between what pricing and accounting and what's billing. It's kind of all seen as the numbers people, and so that's a positive thing in that because we all are also interrelated in what we do and partnering together. Obviously, our group doesn't report into the accounting side of the house, but it's important that we have visibility into what they are doing so that we are all on the same page. To Shanna's point, it doesn't matter how well we price things if it's not being executed from a billing perspective. We need to ensure that all those trains are running seamlessly together.
Absolutely. John, last word on that one?
Oh, we fall under the CFO. We were outside of the CFO, and I don't want to say that there was friction, but there was definitely a lack of communication between the two. And by moving us under the CFO, because we work a lot more closely with accounting, but me and my team work with every department within the firm anyway, conflicts, professional responsibility, the general counsel's office. We're constantly working with everyone else, but we found it better to move us under there. I also have I am a CPA, I'm an accountant. I do have accounting responsibilities. One of the recent things was now write-offs and write-downs are under my purview as well. So it's come full circle. As I used to always say, I was on the front end of creating the pricing. Now I also have the responsibility and being accountable for those. So I can see full circle how we pitch it and how it ends up at the end. So
interesting. That's funny too, the fact that it's come full circle for you. So I guess then if we're leaving people with a takeaway, I think from the first takeaway it was take that first step, take it slowly. If you haven't done it yet, establishing the process, establishing a role would be key. Around this one then, if there's a takeaway from that, at least from what I'm hearing, and I'll go around the horn again, is that it sounds like flexibility and having an open mind might be it, but I'll maybe start back with you, John, and we'll go that way. So anyone who's now established in the role and where we're looking forward, what do you think a key takeaway is over the next 3 to 4 years?
Take time to reassess, to have that flexibility and say, okay, what are we doing right? What needs to be fixed? And having that, can't think of the word right now, but the flexibility to say, we put this in place, it's not working exactly how we want it, and then change it.
Yep, that makes sense. Natasha?
I completely agree with what John said. I also see that, we're going to start to move towards the model that Shanna describes, moving towards more of a legal operations type of a role. So I would say, while we are where we are now, continue to learn, gain experiences in what we're doing so that you can add value from a legal operations perspective.
Excellent. Shanna?
I don't think there's really a one size fits all approach. I mean, you look at all three of us, our firms are vastly different in just how they're structured and how the departments operate. So I really think it is dependent on your firm's culture, and every firm has a unique culture and how things change and process improvement changes throughout the firm. So I think it's just, there really isn't a one size fits all approach.
Right.
And that's okay. You have to do what's best for your firm.
Exactly. You have to, it has to fit with what you guys, well, I think we mentioned earlier, right? Where you're on that curve, where you sit, and what you're able to absorb, what you're not able to absorb, how you're able to bring people on or people that want to shift from position to position. So I think you're dead on. I mean, I think it's a combination of flexibility, understanding who you are and what you're not is probably more important, and what you can and can't do. So, which actually leads nicely, I think, into the next topic, which is, before we get to technology, we'll talk a little bit about clients, because I think it stands to reason that as the role has broadened, the interaction with the client has broadened. So maybe we'll sort of throw this topic out as, how has the evolution of the role, the evolution of both specifically you guys in your roles and your interactions with your firm and your clients have changed over the years. So maybe I'll start with Natasha this time, because you're over there. I'll start with you. So how that relationship between the firm and the client and having this role now, has that, I mean, I'm stating the obvious, it's probably changed the relationship, but why don't you speak to that and we'll go around.
I would say initially, when I was in the role, at the analyst level, and even in my earlier manager years, my interactions with the client were seldom, but when they did occur, it was more so related to accounting and billing issues. And so it seemed like anytime I was interacting with the client, it was on something that was negative. I think over time, we've transitioned to have more of an open relationship and dialogue where the discussions are more fruitful, they're more forward thinking. It's less about what mistakes have happened, what things have occurred, what issues are going on. It's more about how can we improve and do things better going forward? How can we partner and work together to ensure that this is a win-win situation for both of us? And I personally have really enjoyed that, just being at the table, having a seat at the table to be able to have those discussions, and then translating that internally to our attorneys, just to get their buy-in and ensure that we have a strong relationship with the client.
Shanna, before you do, just sorry, quick, I saw a bunch of stuff come up in the chat. Sorry, just want to remind folks, people are posting questions in the chat. If you could slide those over to the Q&A, that'd be great for us. But okay, go ahead, Shanna.
So I think with the creation of Clock and ACC and these organizations, they're really pushing clients and law firms to become their best selves, and they're kind of starting to merge and meet in the middle. And I know we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, but I really think it's true. Sophistication breeds expectation. And as the industry starts to become more sophisticated, our clients are going to continue to have higher and higher expectations. And I really think that if firms can't meet those expectations in terms of certain deliverables or the value that they're providing beyond legal service, I think clients are going to be more likely to switch to a firm that can meet their needs. So there's a balance there that we have to find in the industry. But I do think that there's higher expectations now based on what we're doing and what our firms expect from us.
Yep, I think that's a fair statement. John, I know we talked about this too, that idea of the more progressive and what firms are used to, right, in terms of what you can and can't provide. So take it from there.
Right. Clients want to know that you're doing the innovative things, you're doing the matter management, that you're looking into the AI, you're constantly pushing the envelope as to where you're going to be, how you're practicing law. So they want to know that there are people like us out there challenging our partners and our firms to be at that front cutting edge of technology and bringing these topics to the forefront. When Clock first started, I was doing a presentation and brought it up to a bunch of partners, and they hadn't heard of it yet. It was in its very first year. They said, well, let me tell you about it. Let me tell you what these people are doing, things like that. And I think that's part of our job, is to educate our partners as to what's out there, where we see the industry going. And that's part of the education that we should have. And our clients want to hear that our partners are doing that, and the firms are looking for that more and more.
Right. And on that sort of sophistication breeds expectation stuff, Shanna, I think maybe that ties nicely into sort of the takeaway question there is, well, let me ask it this way, and not to put you on the spot, but do you think firms are at risk if they're not looking at these kinds of roles and looking at bringing a process in around that? And I don't mean the whole firm, but are they at risk of potentially not getting business or renewing business with a client who may be operating with another firm who does?
There is that possibility, and we do see that with RFPs now, clients saying, again, how do you differentiate yourselves from another firm? But I do think that since every firm is very unique, you have to meet your partners where they are and meet your clients where they are. And not every firm has those very sophisticated clients. Again, it's back to the maturity curve. So it really just depends on what space you're competing in. And maybe you do lose some clients, but I think that for most firms, they have their niche clients that I don't necessarily think the clients will switch firms that easily, but I do think that they're going to put the pressure on the firms to innovate, to John's point, and just to be better.
Right. Natasha, would you say that clients are ahead of that curve compared to law firms, or are law firms leading this charge?
Honestly, I would say more so on the client side. I think other industries are further ahead on the technology space than law firms themselves. But it's something that we're moving forward. I think the creation of our types of groups is showing that law firms have an interest and a stake and a desire to move in this direction. And while it may be slower for some firms, faster for others, I think we're all moving in that direction because we all want to meet the needs of our clients and also do work more efficiently and faster. Overall, I think we can't, be complacent or stagnant and think that just because we've had work for the last 10, 20 years for a client that we're always going to have it. There's always competition in the market. There's always someone who's willing to do it cheaper, faster, and provide beautiful dashboards and visualizations and show you all the process improvement that they're doing. And so you always have to be on your toes.
Right. And John, I think that might dovetail nicely into the conversation we had before about it is a business transaction. It is, we are in a business, after all, it's not a charity. So maybe speak to this idea of I think you mentioned the idea of honest broker, honest with ourselves or something to that effect. So maybe touch on that before we jump into the next topic. Or I put you on the spot. I totally put you on the spot.
Yeah, can you rephrase the question? I'm sure I have an answer.
Yeah, no, okay. Well, let's do it this way. The idea of that interaction with your client, right? And Natasha mentioned it is becoming, and I think Shanna did as well, this idea of it's becoming more of a business transaction. And I think in our previous calls we were talking about, are you interacting with procurement now more? Are you interacting with? It is becoming more of a grown-up business, right? Law firms have lagged a little bit, and now are we seeing this idea that it is becoming more sophisticated? It is more of a business transaction as opposed to the back in the day it might have just been a relationship transaction.
Right. And I think it varies by client, and you have to meet them where they are on it, both with your partners and your clients. And you have to support the partners to where they need the support, and then you have to support the client relationship too. The sophistication of the client, it varies the gamut. And a lot of times we're educating our clients even as to some of the pricing terminology or the AFA arrangements that we have. So I think you have to meet them there. And a lot of what we need to do is also educate, which is a little bit, sounds strange sometimes, but educate the buyer as to what metrics and KPIs they should be paying attention to as a buyer. And so I think it's a very interesting dynamic of what you have, because the sophistication of your clients' buying of legal services varies greatly.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John. We see, like, even in the RFP process or in some of our discussions with clients, that they're constantly asking us, because we see so many different clients, what are other clients doing? What can we implement on our side that other firms are or other clients are doing that work for them? And what can you do for us that you're doing for other clients? And so there's always this learning and dialogue and just trying to figure out how do we all become more sophisticated in what we do.
Nice. Last point, Shanna, before we jump on to tech, you good? Excellent. All right, so with that, then we talked a little bit about, someone's mentioned dashboards a few times, someone's mentioned process a few times, and analytics. So why don't we talk about technology then, which was sort of the last pillar of this conversation. And generally, we're talking about how technology has changed over time. I think the earliest date we heard on today's call so far was 2002. So I know technology has changed since then. So why don't we talk a little bit about technology and the evolution of tech from the beginning where you started, and then where we see ourselves today. And I think, generally speaking, the comment I'll make is I think technology has changed, and that I think we all agree that there is a wide mix of technology out there. So I will start with you, Shanna, because I started the other way around. So I'll start with you on tech. Where do you see it? How does your firm use it? Any pitfalls, et cetera, and then we'll go around the horn and go from there.
Oh, sorry, Rob. I still use Excel because I love it. But we've made a lot of progress since Excel. But that's my go-to as my default. I think in general in the law firm, the word technology is a scary word, and it's really just this fear of the unknown. And I said this on our call a couple of weeks ago, but I think the best technology is the technology that nobody knows they're using. And so it's that finding that technology that can be in someone's daily routine with little or to no interruption into what their normal process is. And so I know technology that's good for the pricing team and for business people, it's not necessarily the same or easy to use as it is for attorneys. And so it's difficult to find that balance between the ease of use and sophistication in the same technology piece, which I think will continue to progress over time. And I know at our firm, we've had the clients have been pushing for technology. They want transparency, they want real-time data, and we're working towards that. It's just, it's difficult to make that implementation and that change at one time.
Yep, fair enough. John, and then we'll go that way.
So, Rob, you're very familiar with my technology savvy type person that I am. Yep. I challenge our programmers every single day because the data has to be there and we have to go and grab it and get it. And so I think, Shanna is exactly right. Using technology where people aren't really realizing that we're having technology is where you have to get to it so that it's the ease of it. But I'm also a firm believer in that anything out there is gatherable and we can make decisions based on it. And it's getting front end user buy-in of using that technology in those task codes or phases or whatever. And it has to be the ease of use and then show them the benefit of harvesting all that data out there. Because I think, we're just at the very beginning or infancy stages of how much data is actually out there and how untapped potential there could be out there. We all have, the regular dashboards, we have forecasting tools, things like that. Some firms have the Excel. It's all great, but if we're not building these data repositories that we can then go and data mine on it, then it's just a lost opportunity in my mind. And I think, if it's out there somewhere on a hard drive, on a server, somewhere like that, you should be able to data mine it so that you can make better decisions in the future.
100%. Natasha?
Yeah, it's always difficult to go last in the category, but I'll try to pick up a little bit on what Shanna and John said. But overall, I think, there are a lot of tools out there in the market, all of which are useful depending upon what you're looking for. One of the biggest challenges is, finding that tool that's sophisticated enough for a pricing team or a legal project management team to rely on it without the need for Excel, but then still be intuitive enough for an attorney to be able to use it. It's got to be easier than picking up the phone and calling somebody to do it for you. And that's very difficult to find in a tool and a solution. So I think that's why the default has been Excel for so many, or just calling people. But overall, there's a finite number of resources that firms and clients have. We can't continue to just hire and hire and hire. because it's inefficient. It's an inefficient process. And so we have to get to a point of using tools so that our processes are more scalable in nature for what we do. I mean, we're getting more and more clients, more and more revenue. And so we've got to find ways to do things that's faster and easier than Excel. And so that being said, I would say that we are just at a point where we have to find a way for all of the technology that's out there to work together, because each thing does something separate. But until we can get to a point where it all works together, people are going to be doing things offline.
Well, and that brings up an interesting point, I think. And when we were talking about this, and I'll pick on you, Shanna, around Excel, although you're on mute, so I don't know if you do, but are we at a place right now? And the interesting part is, as a vendor who provides that kind of software, we find ourselves in a unique position because we get to talk to a lot of you and understand what's out there. And I think we're actually probably where your pricing teams were 4 or 5 years ago. Our technology firms are catching up with what you guys need. And so is it fair to say, and it sounds like it might be, that there may be multiple solutions at a firm until one emerges? Like there may be a unicorn out there. I believe we have it, but that's a different story. But there may be a unicorn out there. Is that fair to say that you may be using multiple technologies for a little while?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's difficult because there's not really a one size or one piece of technology that really fits every single problem that we have. And so right now, I feel like we just have a lot of bolts onto our system of like, this answers this problem and this fixes this problem, but there's not really a one technology piece out there that has changed the way that we do business. And I know that everyone remembers if they had a bad implementation of a software or a new technology. And so I think, I know for our team, it's like we're a little hesitant to roll out these big technology pieces because I'm actually reading a book right now and it says ideas are easy, but execution is everything. And so it's better to have it executed well than to just get technology out there. And so I think that that's been our focus, is to make sure that we have good technology, but then we're also able to scale that for the firm and execute it in a good way.
Right. No, I like that idea, by the way, the book. You're right. The idea of a great idea is great, but if you can't, what's the point, right? John, I saw you nodding, or Natasha, either one can jump in before I think we'll probably open it up to questions because there's quite a few who have come in. Do you want to say something, John?
Yeah, this is going to echo it, is that there is no one size fits all out there. None of our clients are the same. None of our partners are the same. Each of them have a very different practice. And anytime you implement the technology for one, it may not be perfect for the other one. So it's recognizing what tool is right for each situation. Hopefully you can capture 50%, 75% with one or two tools, because you don't have the resources to have everything, and you don't have the training or the staff to maintain everything. But at the same time, I think if you just look at one technology as the end-all solution to everything, in my opinion, that would be rather short-sighted.
Right. And that's an interesting point. I'll pass over to you, Natasha, before we go to questions, which is a well-executed partial sort of rollout of technology better than none?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what. Before we go to questions, I think that might be the takeaway here, right? So we'll go around the horn for takeaways, but it sounds like, if I'm recapping, that look, there's, as it pains me to say this, Excel will be part of our lives for a little while, but it's there. I mean, the reality is it but that's fine. There's a great story out of the UK where they were using it to track. I don't know if I said this on our call, but they were using Excel to track COVID positive cases. And they lost 16,000 because they hit the limit of Excel and didn't realize they had. So every new case they were adding was just dropping the ones off the bottom. So there's your danger for Excel, Shanna. But although you're not tracking things as important as COVID-19 cases. So, but that said, so I think there's going to be a blend of technology, and I'll pass around the horn. I see Toby jumping on, so I'll pass around the horn. Is the takeaway on technology? Let's start with you, Natasha, and then we'll go John, then Shanna, and then Toby.
Yeah, I'll just say, change is never easy. We're always looking for that perfect tool. And because we're looking for that perfect tool, we never implement one. But I would say that, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Just try it. It's never going to be perfect, but at least it will help and get you started in that direction.
Nice. John?
And continue pushing the envelope on technology, because it's always going to be the cutting edge, but you have to keep pushing your programmers. So you have to keep pushing the data out there.
Yep. Shanna?
I would say don't be scared to try other technologies or explore other technologies that are in other industries. I mean, we recently just hired someone from Ford Motor Company that worked in their innovation group. So we're bringing people from the outside in. Sometimes it gives a fresh perspective on what we can do and what we should be doing that's worked in other industries.
Interesting. Okay. Very nice. All right, Toby, I think there are questions. I see some.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we actually have quite a few. And so we'll need to move through them quickly, but I'm actually going to address one very quickly. There's a question about handling rate setting for 2021 and accounting for the impact of COVID. We actually have in the queue a webinar that's going to talk about that, and we'll have 2 clients and 2 law firms to talk about that. So that'll come up probably in early December, just so you're aware. With that, I'll start with, because Joel has been very patient. He put this question in quite early. And as I understand, Joel is a practicing lawyer. Question is, and I'll try to direct these as I can, and I'm going to direct this one to you, John, because your comment about meeting the client where they are. The question is, regarding this evolution from informal to disciplined process the 3 of you have described, is it the case that a timekeeper who wants to minimize formality in launching a client engagement would be best to go with the straight billable hour framework? So basically, to keep it simple, would they go with hourly?
Not necessarily. I mean, it does seem like it keeps it simple, but I think you have to do what is right for each engagement. I know that's a very vanilla answer, but I don't, the billable hour isn't always the right answer to everything to keep it easy.
I think that's a good answer and a simple one.
Yeah.
Next one, I think I'll put it towards Shanna, because you're saying you were sitting in accounting or finance. Legal, and this is from Jennifer Fowler, legal project managers who sit with an omnibus matter, which I assume is a broader matter, omnibus matter management group, sometimes emerge as the dedicated client liaison who collaborates with a relationship partner, accounting, pricing, client legal ops, and practice management. What is the benefit of having that person sit with finance or accounting over an omnibus group, like I assume a practice management or pricing group? What are your thoughts on that, Shanna?
So what we found is that a lot of the issues we were having were actually with billing, and not necessarily that our billers were billing wrong. It's just that we didn't really have a good understanding of what is our financial system and what the e-billing system was capable of. And nor were a lot of the clients didn't know what their systems were capable of. And so having someone that has that background of knowing what the financial system is capable of doing helps in the pricing sense, that you can help actually create phase codes, task codes, come up with budgets that actually work and then can flow through to the client side. So I don't really necessarily think there's a one size fits all, and I think it's good that this person is sitting out with their entire team. But for us, what it worked is just having someone on the accounting side give their perspective on making sure that when we're creating these alternative fee arrangements or portfolios, that we're doing them in a way that can be transferred to the client in a good way.
And same experience here. And in fact, our LPM people are becoming very client facing, and sometimes the primary person because of their interactions with the client. So for Natasha, and this is from, and I probably won't pronounce the name appropriately, Keelan Poon. Is it far-reaching to suggest pricing acts as the guardians for 3 primary outcomes: commerciality, firm risk management, and critical client experience? And that's been the questioner's experience.
I would say it varies by firm, but overall, I think that's, somewhat of the direction that we're heading. Even on our personal team, we have pricing, legal project management, some competitive intelligence, but we also have outside counsel guidelines on our team that helps on the risk side of things. We also work very closely with our client development and business development groups, as well as our billing and accounting. And so to that extent, I think we have the most broad exposure to internal staff as we do to the client. And so it makes for almost a natural transition to serving in that role.
Very good. And Rich Young has some compound questions, so I might come back to those. Michael Baker and I'll has a question. I'll come back to you, John. Do your pricing team members have established areas of specialization, like, and he puts down practice group, client skill sets and stuff like, I think the tradition would be litigation versus transactional.
Right. So yes, I have them, not formal lines. They all have to help each other out, but I have somebody on my team that is intellectually property trained, that he knows what patent prosecution, office actions, things like that. He's actually gone through some boot camps on intellectual property. I have somebody else that came in from the financial services side industries on the business law side of doing those pricing proposals. And the litigation person that we have, she has been more and more trained into different phases of litigation, things like that. But at any time, so that we have cross-training and staffing, appropriate staffing, everyone can do everything, but I do have them trained up so that they know the buzzwords, they know the certain areas a little bit better than maybe somebody else. So
good one. Okay, I'll go back to Shanna, and I'm trying to condense one of Rich's questions or compound questions, and it's about transparency. How does your firm feel about transparency in planning, staffing, and tasks for legal matters? And to the clients, are they transparent? So it's really, I'm interpreting this, are partners doing partner level tasks and associates doing associate level tasks? And are you being very transparent with the clients around this?
Yeah, I hope that our partners are doing partner level work and our associates are doing associate level work, because if they're not, then we're going to have to talk to them. But we do have some of these clients. We do have a client success manager at our firm that does a lot of feedback with clients. And so we have our ears to the ground, and we're always continually asking for feedback on how we're staffing our matters, good or bad. And then we come back and we reassess and we make sure that our teams are doing that. But I hope that they are.
And I think that's a good answer. Very safe one. Well done, Shanna. And last question here, looking at the time, Natasha, and this is from Gordon Bala-Webb from Lex Mundi, because he taught me how to pronounce that. How do you price a productized service or even a product versus pricing the usual matters? So I take that if you have, like, say, patent prosecution, and it's a repeatable one. And I don't know, Natasha, how much your firm has of that kind of stuff or what experience you might have, but I'm pitching that one to you.
Can you rephrase the first part of the question?
Well, it's say, I'll give an example. Say you were doing for startups, and you had a package and you just said, we're going to charge X dollars for this package, versus so you've set a price for that you can offer to multiple clients versus, negotiating with client by client on specific matters.
Got it. I would say that, those pricing structures work, but you're saying, like, how do you price it? Yeah.
How do you come up with that number?
Oh, that's a very specific question. I would say
I'm interpreting Gordon's question, but that's
it depends. We have generic benchmarks for pricing, depending upon the practice area in which we're looking at, the history. So we've analyzed the data to figure out how much these things typically cost, and we can come up with an average price at a reasonable discount that makes sense across the board. So even if the staffing varies on that particular engagement, we're still within a ballpark. We kind of look at it as a portfolio. Some will do better under that arrangement, some will do worse, but overall, it kind of averages out to be about what we were looking for. And that's the easiest approach, because a lot of, even RFPs that we get, we don't know all the details. We don't know what work's going to come in, who's going to be staffed on it, but we can make general assumptions based on data analytics to come up with an approach that makes sense.
Good. And I'm interpreting your answer that you sort of come up with a standard scope and then you spread the risk across multiples. That makes sense to me. With that, I'm going to say thank you again from LVN and hand it back to Rob to close this up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I echo that. Thanks, everyone. Thank you to the three of you for your insight and sort of your comments. I guess from my perspective, again, we sort of want to thank LVN for allowing us to host this, and are a proud founding member of LVN, and we look forward to continuing this conversation offline. If you need to get a hold of me, LinkedIn, or email me directly, and we can continue that conversation.
Yeah, and to jump back in, there was a question directed at John. Not to take the question now, but if that person would like to follow up with John, I assume they can find you online, John, and they can connect with you, and you can answer it with them if they want to do that.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.